I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old Oscar Countdown. And here we are for another bonus episode. I was just here a couple of days ago talking about my reactions to the BAFTA winners, and now we are here to talk about what will be the most impactful weekend on our Oscar predictions out of any weekend this season. Both the PGA and Actors Awards are this weekend. I'm going to give my reactions to the award shows and the winners and what it means on Monday's episode, but want to get in here a few days before the awards, talk about what I think is going to win, make some predictions, put some stuff on the line, and not talk about how I knew it was going to happen anyways, but actually make those predictions. If you're new to the channel, welcome. This is our 10th season predicting the Oscars. We have very accurate results, not in terms of the nominations, but also in terms of the winners. You can check back just this past year, top 2% Gold Derby Awards expert. We did very well this year and have been doing very well this year. So I'm excited to talk about the Actors Awards and PGA and my predictions, because I really do think this is going to help either solidify the Best Picture race in some of these acting categories, or maybe throw another wrench into what has been a super chaotic season. And as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know what your predictions are for SAG, for the Actors Awards. And if you see things going a certain way, give your thoughts, give your opinions. Ultimately, these are my opinions. They're ultimately, though, to help you make your own predictions. I'm going to give my thoughts, my analysis to maybe sway you one way or another. But ultimately, this is a community that I want to build, and I hope you kind of join and stick around. Like I said, weekly videos, sometimes multiple videos a week. Now, for 10 years predicting the Oscars, we know what we're talking about. We've done the work, we've done the analysis. Now I'm just going to try to hopefully simplify it for you, because if you're a real hardcore fan watching a video like this, you know that sometimes making things simple or hearing another person's perspective can be very helpful in terms of at least clarifying your own opinion. But without further ado, it's going to be a long video. We're going to start with the Actors Awards predictions, the top 4 acting categories just on the film side, and then Best Ensemble. Not going to talk about the stunt or the TV stuff. So without further ado, let's get into things. Starting off with my predictions for Best Actor, I am going to go with Timothée Chalamet for Marty Supreme. And I think we have to use the BAFTAs as a key indicator as to how to react or not react. And we kind of want a combination of both. I don't want to look at Chalamet's loss to Robert Aramayo at the BAFTAs as a non-factor and not react to it at all. But I don't want to overreact to it. And that was kind of my analysis ultimately here, which is that Chalamet, I still think, is the frontrunner to win at the Actors Awards. He is not the clear frontrunner like if he would have been had he won at BAFTA, but he is still a frontrunner, and I'll explain to you why. So like I mentioned on Monday's video, the fact that Robert Aramayo won at BAFTAs is not a great sign for Chalamet, because it means that he's not an absolute #1 clear winner. Usually the front runners that are clear winners win at every award show. So it's an indication that Chalamet's not that. That being said, he lost out to somebody who's not nominated at the Oscars. So he's not even nominated here at the Actors Awards. So there's not a concern that maybe that actor is stronger than him. That's a positive sign. You note that the fact that Robert Aramayo is English, he's in a British film, so there's maybe an extra bias towards that at the BAFTAs. There is a historical kind of a bias usually towards European films, and then also to English films and English productions at that award show. So that's kind of the positive signs for Chalamet. And then you look at the performance itself and you go, I think it's a very American performance. This whole idea of the movie is about kind of American exceptionalism and this brash, idealistic, trying to achieve and chase your dreams kind of American point of view. I think will appeal to the largely American members of the Actors Awards. Now, I know there is some kind of stats and certain things going against Chalamet. The first one being, which is true, he's probably not as strong as we all think. He's not the clear in a way frontrunner because he lost at BAFTA, which indicates some lack of international support. However, I've also been seeing a lot of reactions saying that Chalamet won't win here because he just won last year at the Actors Awards. And the reality is the Actors Awards don't really do that, reward an actor in back-to-back years very often. Last time it happened was in the early 2000s with Renee Zellweger. But then you kind of look at it, that stat, and you realize how I think flimsy it ultimately is. It doesn't happen there very often that an actor gets nominated within back-to-back years, and the actors who have been more so legendary actors who have already won an Oscar before. Jeff Bridges, Denzel Washington, Meryl Streep. and that Chalamet is maybe a little bit closer to the most obvious comparison point, which would be Renee Zellweger. So I think the fact that he just won last year won't be enough of a factor to not reward him. I think that we know Mario Supreme is a movie that did very well domestically and less so internationally. So that matters, because if it did really well at the box office with Americans, well, an American group like the SAG awards group here for the Actors Awards, we know that they're more likely to like that movie versus, a movie like F1 that does very well internationally versus something like okay in the domestic side of things. We also know that this group liked Marty Supreme. It wasn't an obvious pick that I was going to get in for Ensemble. I had predicted it, but wasn't obvious. Odessa Zion got nominated here. She didn't get nominated at the Oscars, so there is a general appreciation for this film. And we do know they like Chalamet. They just gave him the Actors Award last year, even though the Oscars decided to go a different direction. They kind of put their support behind Chalamet. So you have a young, exciting actor who, the last time an actor won 2 years in a row was Renee Zellweger. Chalamet, I think, is in that similar mold. We know they like him because they rewarded him last year. We know they like his movie because they gave it nominations that the Oscars ultimately didn't. And the only kind of industry award that we have to go off of is the BAFTAs. And he didn't lose out to any of the competition here. It's not like he lost out to Leo or to Ethan Hawke. And then you factor in the fact that he also won at the Golden Globes, and he also won at Critics' Choice. So he is the kind of presumptive favorite, particularly, I think, going into the award show. So I still think Chalamet is going to win kind of a long one on a category that we thought was clear and obvious. But I still think that after the Actors Awards, Chalamet will likely win this and still likely go on to win the Oscar. Then my prediction for Best Actress, I went with Jessie Buckley for Hamnet. Don't need to spend too much time on this. She is the clear and away a frontrunner to win in this category at the Oscars. So I also think she's going to win here at the Actors Awards. Let's not forget Hamnet also, like Mary Supreme, overperformed when it came to Actors Award nominations, showing up in Ensemble. Also showing up for something like Paul Mescal, who didn't show up at the Oscars. So we know that the Actors Awards like this film. Ever since I saw the film back in September, I knew she was going to win. She has a dynamite performance. So the fact that we know they like Hamnet, and if you like Hamnet, I think you almost have to like Jessie Buckley's performance. And then you factor in the fact that she won at BAFTA, the only industry award group that we have to go off of. But then other non-industry groups, whether it be the Critics' Prizes, she has even more than Rose Byrne. Golden Globes, Critics' Choice Awards, those other televised award shows, she won as well. The acting categories aren't super clear this year, but what I think is clear is this Best Actress. I don't think we should overlook it. I think she's going to very easily win in this category, and frankly, I'd be stunned if she didn't. Then my prediction for Best Supporting Actor was Sean Penn for One Battle After Another. And I went with this because I tried to take a broad, simplistic view of this race. If you're like me, you're deep into the award season, especially for these competitive categories. We've thought of every potential possibility. Oh, what if this happens? Then this person could win. What if this happens? What if the voters decide to do this? What if? There's all these different options because there is no clear and away frontrunner. So I tried to take a look and a bird's eye view of things and try to understand kind of from a numbers point of view, from a statistics, from just a basic, of course that was going to happen point of view, understand who the winner was ultimately going to be. And I ultimately landed at Sean Penn. Because at the end of the day, when we look at predicting the acting awards, I look at the industry awards, which is the Actors Awards and BAFTA. We look at the industry awards because when we're trying to predict the Oscars, we know that there are members of BAFTA who are also members of the Academy. So therefore, it's technically Academy member voters voting on the Oscars, which is not the same thing, for example, for the Golden Globes. There are no members of the Golden Globes that are also members of the Academy. So that's why I mentioned BAFTA as such an important thing. But we only have one industry award to go off of, and they went with Sean Penn. So very simply, let's go with that because that's the only indication that we have so far. Then you look at other kind of simple things. Who has the most Oscars of this group? Which would theoretically mean that the Academy likes them the most because they've already won before. Who is that? Sean Penn with 2 Oscars. Who is in the movie that is in the most well-liked movie of the year? Sean Penn and Benicio del Toro. Who has the most screen time in the most well-liked movie of the year, aside from the lead in Leonardo DiCaprio? It's Sean Penn. Sean Penn, who has double the amount of screen time as his co-star in Benicio del Toro. So that's kind of a really deadly combination. We can talk about potential negatives or the what ifs, and you can kind of talk about them till your face is blue. And I think there's still some concerns that I have. What if the certain members of the Academy don't like Sean Penn because of his political beliefs, or he's somewhat of a controversial figure, or maybe they worked with him in the 90s and they don't really like his attitude, and they're maybe not going to vote for him. Or maybe they're not going to vote for him because he already has 2 Oscars and they don't want to give him a third. It's all these what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. What we do know, though, is that he won the BAFTA. And there is no obvious reason to explain why he won the BAFTA. He's not a Brit. He's never won a BAFTA before. He wasn't the front runner. So it is a notable fact that he did win there. Then you know the fact that he is probably the most well-liked member of these 5 of the Academy, because he's won twice before. So there's clearly a lot of people still within the Academy that like him and like his performance. It wasn't 60 years ago, right? It was 2008, his last win. So there are still members of the Academy back then, now, that like and appreciate Sean Penn. He's a villainous performance, a fun performance. He's making a lot of choices. He's the second most amount of screen time in the most well-liked movie of the year, which I expect maybe to win Best Picture right now in one battle after another. So you just look at all those facts and those combinations and you go, it really is tough to overcome all of that. The fact that we have an industry precursor already, we have a kind of typical role that usually does win in this category. Think of a Robert Downey Jr. recently for Oppenheimer, going even back to a Heath Ledger for Joker, or J.K. Simmons for Whiplash. The kind of villain supporting actor win is a common trajectory that we've seen before. And then he's also in the frontrunner potentially to win for Best Picture, the most well-liked movie of the year. All those factors were just too much to overcome the fact that from a bird's eye view, from a simplistic kind of a view, I think Sean Penn is the frontrunner right now to win for Best Supporting Actor. And the fact that, we don't have any other kind of contenders here makes it all the more obvious to me that Sean Penn is the most likely winner here for Best Supporting Actor. Then my prediction for Best Supporting Actress, I went with Amy Madigan for Weapons, which is a bit of a kind of long shot prediction, but I wanted to go with something that the BAFTAs didn't go with. And because I went with Sean Penn there, I went with Jessie Buckley, I felt like I wanted to kind of zig for one category while others are zagging, and go with a little bit of a surprise, but not a crazy surprise, and that is to go with Amy Madigan for Weapons. And that's because when I was looking at this category and look at kind of all really tight categories, you have to look for edges. You have to look for certain things that matter more than others. So on the Sean Penn side of things, I tried to look at the facts and the stats, and that was enough of an edge to go over some of the other potential contenders. With my Amy Madigan pick, I'm actually going a little bit more on the narrative side of things. Now, I don't always do that. I try to stay away from that for the Oscars, but in such a competitive kind of category here, particularly one in which I don't think a certain stat favors one person or another, there isn't a clear kind of stats winner like I do think there is with supporting actor. So I went with the clear narrative winner. In the supporting actor category, there is no clear narrative winner. If anything, it's Stellan Skarsgård, who's not nominated. But in the supporting actress side, I do think there's a clear narrative winner, which is Amy Madigan, which is the same narrative that got Demi Moore her SAG award that didn't translate at the Oscars, or when Glenn Close won the SAG award but didn't translate ultimately to the Oscars. It's almost the fact that the narrative behind the performance is more important than the performance itself. Amy Madigan is the kind of clear example of that this year. She's the only older actress of the other four who are relatively new to movies that don't have a lot of credits. So you know the fact that Amy Madigan probably has a lot of friends within the Actors Awards group here, SAG. A lot of SAG voters that she's probably friendly with. She's married to another famous actor in Ed Harris, so you have that kind of power couple, combination where I'm sure a lot of people maybe who've worked with Ed Harris has maybe met her, his wife in Amy Madigan. It is that kind of a comeback role for a beloved actress. She was nominated in 1986 for the Oscars and now 2026 for Weapons. It is this 40-year journey, and I think the actors will like that. There's a reason why the actors go with Lily Gladstone or Demi Moore or Glenn Close. It's because it's an indication to the actors, a sign of hope, that they're maybe only one win away, one role away from getting their career back on track and being back in the spotlight. It is a kind of aspirational thing, which is why we usually see sometimes the narratives be a little bit more important at the Actors Awards with SAG, with the actors, rather than sometimes the Oscars. They just predict the performance in the movie that they like the best. It's different though at the Actors Awards, which is why in this such a tight race, when there is no kind of a positive sign for stats, Wumi won at BAFTA, but Tiana Taylor is maybe in the stronger film, right? But then, you could say Amy Madigan has the narrative. So I ultimately went with the narrative. I felt like the stats weren't that clear. Amy had the narrative side side of things. We know that Weapons as well is a movie that also, like Marty Supreme, did better domestically than internationally. Actually did twice as better at the box office domestically than One Battle After Another. Not a lot of people know that, so it was a huge phenomenon. We know the Actors Awards usually like more mainstream types of films, so definitely something like Sinners is in their category, but so is Weapons. I don't think it being a blockbuster movie is a bad thing. If anything, it's a good thing. It means it's been well seen. It's a kind of showy performance in many ways as well. It's not very subtle, like I would say Wunmi Mosaku's performance, for example, in something like Sinners. She has the makeup and the smile and all the tics and the scariness and all that good stuff that makes the performance so great. But it is showy, it is obvious, it is acting, it is transformative in a way that I think the actors will appreciate, and they usually go with the bigger performance rather than the more subtle one. So ultimately, I'm betting on narrative, and I think that factor clears it for me. And then my final prediction for the Actors Awards here, Best Ensemble, Best Cast, their kind of Best Picture prize. I'm going to go with One Battle After Another. I see a lot of people predicting Sinners, and I think that's a very, fine prediction, and it can definitely happen. It is maybe more of a traditional mold of a winner. But frankly, we're at the stage of the race where I think One Battle After Another is a generational type of a film, and I don't want to bet against it. Not only did it did a crazy overperformance when it comes to the critics' prizes. Almost all the critics groups unanimously agree that it was the best film of the year. Then you get the Golden Globes who agrees. Then you get DGA with Paul Thomas Anderson, and they agree. Critics' Choice agrees. Now BAFTA just recently agrees. We're on a stage right now where we could see a huge shift with something like, Sinners winning PGA and SAG, and all of a sudden, bang, Sinners is the front runner. But what we've seen so far, One Battle After Another is a clear favorite to win Best Picture. It's got director locked up. It's got adapted screenplay locked up. It could have maybe one of the two supporting acting categories or both of them locked up. We knew ever since it came out that it was one of the best movies of the past 5 years, maybe of the past decade, maybe of the past century. And in terms of wins, it is only done that every single time. And when we talk about Sinners, I think a lot of people were surprised when Sinners overperformed at the Actors Awards. Wunmi Mosaku, not a lot of people had, she got nominated. I don't think anyone has Miles Caton predicted here. He got nominated as well. And then, of course, Michael B. Jordan, and then, of course, Picture, and I think A Stunt as well got nominated. But let's not forget that One Battle After Another, while it didn't overperform, actually got more nominations than Sinners. Jason Finley got in for Best Actress, even though she didn't get in at the Oscars. Then the both supporting actors in Sean Penn and Benicio del Toro. Then also Leonardo DiCaprio. Then also Film Ensemble. So the movie did very well, and I would say in the main acting categories, technically better than Sinners did. So I think a lot of people go, oh, but they love Sinners, right? It overperformed. But then not, remembering that, well, One Battle After Another has won everywhere. It doesn't have maybe the more traditional ensemble, but it does have 5 acting nominations at the Actors Awards. That's a rarity for a film to get that many amount of nominations and not win for Best Ensemble. And I think right now it's a movie that is more in line with something like Everything Everywhere All at Once or Oppenheimer, and that it potentially wins 6, 7 Oscars at when it actually happens. And those types of movies don't usually lose out on one of these award categories. They usually sweep the entire season, and I think winning here will be the ultimate sign that the race is over. One Battle After Another will win Best Picture. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm at the stage of going, I'm not going to bet against One Battle After Another. It's been such a dominant run at every industry group, at every critics' prizes, pretty much hitting its super high expectations every single time. And I don't expect that to change here, and I do think that One Battle, even while not being the most traditional kind of cast ensemble working together factor, will ultimately win just because they like the movie that much. Okay, now I also promised some PGA predictions here, just the main category here, the best film of the year. PGAs matter, and the reason why I like to cover it is because they are the most accurate predictor of Best Picture. Whatever film wins here usually goes on to win at the Oscars, and that's because they use a preferential ballot system just like the Oscars in terms of voting. So you see that kind of a potential differences between a checked off 1 to 5 in something like BAFTA versus a PGA system here. I'm also predicting One Battle After Another to win in this category, and that's because I think just what I mentioned before with the Actors Awards, it is the clear and away front runner. Right now, it has won everything. It hasn't lost anywhere. Even something like, Sinners losing out at the Golden Globes is maybe not a great sign of support for that film overall. Whereas One Battle After Another has been on a dominant run, and I do think that will continue into the PGAs. The one concern I have is that it wasn't a huge box office success versus a movie like Sinners, which was. And when you talk about the Actors Awards, box office and more popularity does really matter, which is why we see a movie like Weapons, for example, or F1 getting nominated here, and then Weapons not getting nominated at the Oscars. More of the kind of blockbuster success of these types of films usually get recognized at this group. So you may go, maybe they'll reward Sinners because it would made more money at the Oscars, or at the box office, excuse me. And that may definitely be true. But the PGAs don't always go with the movie that made the most amount of money. Honora just last year won. They gave it to Coda in years past. What they really want to see, and I think what they're kind of allergic to, are flops. Movies that, let's say came out and cost $50 million and didn't make any money, and that's a concern. But they're not necessarily going to look at One Battle After Another and Sinners and go, One Battle After Another was a complete failure. It wasn't. I think, it made its money back. It wasn't a huge loss for the studio. It maybe doesn't, crack the top 15 of the box office, but was kind of relative for its content, a success for Paul Thomas Anderson. It made a decent amount of money. And I think that's the ultimate factor. I don't think that Sinners will win here just because it made more money. I think that because ultimately One Battle After Another is not a flop, it will be seen as an equal level in terms of a movie like Sinners. And then the question is, what movie do you think they like better? And I think based on BAFTA, based on Critics' Choice, based on Golden Globes, based on all the industry awards, critics, what have you, One Battle After Another has been winning everywhere. So I don't want to bet against it. I'm also going to go with One Battle After Another here for the Producers Guild Awards. But it's an exciting weekend. If it goes with One Battle After Another, we can kind of lock that in for the Oscars. But if Sinners wins at the Actors Awards and PGA, I think Sinners is the front runner and is going to win at the Oscars. That will be super exciting and fun. And then who knows? Maybe we have a split and the Actors Awards goes to Sinners and then One Battle After Another wins a PGA here. And then there's a real debate going into Oscars night. Going to be really fascinating to see what ultimately happens. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have different predictions than mine. Tell me why I'm wrong or why I'm right. Or if you want to hear out some more of my thoughts, I'd love to do that in the comments down below. And stay tuned. Monday, I'm going to give my reactions to talk about if I was right or wrong when it comes to the Actors Awards and what it means for the Oscar race. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.